Quezon City never truly slept. Even past midnight, the streets buzzed with jeepneys rattling like tired bones, neon lights flickering above cracked sidewalks, and people chasing dreams that often slipped through their fingers. In one of the city's most crowded districts lived a girl named Althea Cruz. She was 16 years old, thin as a reed, with eyes that had learned too early how to hide pain. Her home was a single rented room made of plywood and rusted tin, shared with her younger brother Marco and their mother Elena. Their father had vanished years ago, leaving behind nothing but debts and silence. Every morning, Althea woke before the sun. She fetched water, cooked rice if they had any, and walked Marco to school before heading to her own public high school. She was smart, the kind of student teachers quietly rooted for, but hunger had a way of dulling even the brightest minds. Some days she fainted in class. Other days she pretended she wasn't starving, smiling through the ache because she knew her mother felt worse. Elena Cruz worked as a laundry woman, scrubbing other people's clothes until her hands cracked and bled. But when she got sick, the income stopped. Bills piled up. Rent was overdue. Marco needed medicine for his asthma. The landlord began knocking harder, his voice less patient each time. That was when desperation entered their lives like an uninvited guest who refused to leave. One night, as rain hammered the tin roof, a woman named Marissa came knocking. She wore heavy makeup and smelled of cheap perfume. She claimed she managed performers for small events, bars, and private parties. She had heard about Althea from someone at school who mentioned the girl could sing. Marissa said there was money to be made. Easy money, she promised. Just performances. Just singing and dancing. Nothing more. Elena hesitated. Althea felt fear coil in her stomach. She had sung before, quietly, at school programs, but never like this. Still, when Marissa placed a few thousand pesos on the table, enough to cover rent and medicine, the room fell silent. Hunger has a way of drowning out fear. Elena nodded, tears sliding down her face as she whispered that they had no choice. The first performance was in a dimly lit bar near Cubao. Althea wore a borrowed dress that didn't quite fit, her hands trembling as she stepped onto a small stage. The crowd barely looked at her at first. Men laughed, glasses clinked, smoke curled through the air. But when she began to sing, something shifted. Her voice was raw, cracked with emotion, carrying years of quiet suffering. A few heads turned. Someone stopped talking. By the end of the song, the room was eerily still. Applause came, scattered at first, then louder. Marissa smiled like she had found a gold mine. Althea felt relief, but also shame. This wasn't the dream she had imagined when she sang alone at home. Still, the money helped. More gigs followed. The venues grew darker. The crowds grew rougher. The expectations changed. Soon, singing wasn't enough. Marissa demanded more revealing clothes, more suggestive movements. Althea protested. She cried. Marissa reminded her of the rent, the medicine, the debt. Elena avoided Althea's eyes. Marco hugged his sister tighter every night, sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. The night that changed everything came unexpectedly. Marissa booked Althea for a private event in a gated compound in Quezon City. The pay was higher than usual. Too high. Althea felt dread settle deep in her chest. The house was massive, guarded by men in black suits. Inside, powerful people laughed and drank, their voices echoing off marble floors. Althea was pushed onto a makeshift stage. The lights blinded her. She began to sing, her voice shaking. Halfway through, a man in the front row stood up. He stared at her like she was property. He said something to Marissa, who nodded quickly. Althea's heart pounded. She tried to finish the song, but her throat closed. That was when it happened. From the back of the room, a woman's voice cut through the noise. Calm, firm, angry. The music stopped. Everyone turned. The woman stepped forward, her face pale with shock. She recognized Althea. It was Ms. Reyes, a respected human rights lawyer and a guest who had been invited by mistake, unaware of the night's true purpose. Ms. Reyes demanded to know why a minor was being forced to perform in such a setting. The room erupted into chaos. Marissa tried to pull Althea away. Security moved in, but Ms. Reyes was already on her phone, recording, calling, exposing. She spoke loudly, naming names, reminding them of laws they thought money could erase. Althea froze, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, someone stood between her and the people who owned her fear. The night ended with police sirens. Althea was taken into protective custody. Marissa disappeared. The powerful men threatened lawsuits, but evidence spread quickly. Videos leaked. Whispers turned into headlines. A scandal exploded across social media, shaking Quezon City's elite. Elena collapsed when she heard what had happened, overwhelmed by guilt. Marco cried, blaming himself for needing medicine. Althea felt numb. Freedom felt unfamiliar, almost terrifying. Weeks passed. Investigations unfolded. More girls came forward. The story grew bigger than anyone expected. Ms. Reyes visited Althea often, bringing food, books, and something even more valuable, hope. She helped enroll Althea in a scholarship program for disadvantaged youth with artistic talent. Althea returned to school. The whispers followed her at first, but they faded as people began to see her not as a victim, but as a survivor. She sang again, this time on a proper stage, under bright lights, with an audience that listened for the right reasons. Her voice had changed. It carried strength now. Pain transformed into power. 1 year later, Althea stood on a stage in Quezon City once more, but this time it was at a charity concert advocating for exploited children. Her mother watched from the crowd, hands clasped in prayer. Marco waved proudly, his inhaler tucked safely in his pocket. When Althea finished singing, the applause was thunderous. Not because she had been forced, but because she chose to stand there. The girl who had once been pushed into the darkness had become a light others could follow. Sometimes, change doesn't begin with strength. Sometimes, it begins with survival. And sometimes, one voice is enough to bring an entire system crashing down.